Awesome. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Soul Seeds, where Johanna is my guest expert for today. And Johanna is a clinical therapist and energy worker. And the topic we are going to discuss today is attachments and interpersonal relationships. So, as a non-English speaking person, what is the difference between attachments and interpersonal relationships? See, it's even a difficult word for me.
No, you did good. Attachment is the way that we attach to ourselves and to other people that actually affects interpersonal relationships, right? So there's four attachment styles. And the ideal one would be secure, meaning if maybe we're maybe in a conflict or an argument, I would be okay with that and just know that it's about the experience and it's nothing about me personally that's being triggered, right? If I have an anxious attachment style, that would bring me a ton of anxiety and I'd be triggered and so much uncertainty and can actually be self-sabotaging behavior due to my own attachment style that was developed during my early years with caregivers.
Mhm. And what are some of the other attachment styles that we have?
Yeah, so you have a secure, which is the healthiest. You
Mhm.
have anxious that says just that, right? And there's a interpersonal relationship. There's some anxiety around scuffs and conflict. You have avoidant, and that's kind of like we get in an argument, and I'm going to avoid coming
Mm.
back to that place. And so this can get kind of muddied when maybe someone just needs time out, right? Someone needs just
Right.
time to regulate it, right? But then it kind of goes on and you're avoiding. Now we get into some of that default attachment. And then you have like an anxious or disorganized one where you're a combination of anxious and avoidant.
Mm.
And so that's brings a lot of distress to the person with that attachment style. But
Mm.
for sure, all those kind of reflect our early childhood development around attachment and secure caregivers.
And how do we recognize those attachment styles in ourselves?
Yeah, one of the easy ways to do that is kind of what shows up for you when you're in feeling uncomfortable or
Mm-hmm.
having an uncomfortable conversation, or maybe if you're in an argument with a friend or a partner, what comes up for you? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
naturally we get emotionally charged, but what is your default? What makes you feel safe? Do you want to avoid, like, I can't deal with this right now. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll circle back to this. Maybe gives you need a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so monitoring that, yeah, so just essentially kind of how you show up when there's discomfort with interpersonal relationships.
And do you have some examples of how this shows up, like in our relationships? Like sometimes they can show up in ways we don't even expect or aren't that obvious.
Yeah, a good one is kind of just tailing off of the uh argument example.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in an argument with my partner and I know that I'm pretty introverted, so to me I need more recharge before I engage in with other people,
Mm-hmm.
being cognizant of where am I operating from? Am I being reactive, right? Do I feel like I need to just come off on defense? And what does that look like? Am I thinking I need to cling on, like, no, I know my partner needs space, but I need you to answer me right now, like right now, right? It
Mm-hmm.
becomes about you in a reactive manner that is about your attachment style, how you're attaching and what feels like that's disrupting the foundation for you.
And when you mention it like that, it sounds like those attachment styles are like driven by the ego. Is that right?
Well, they're driven by yeah, I guess it could be ego because it's about you and your own kind of your triggers, right? But your attachment, I guess it's a little bit more layered than just the ego, but
Mm-hmm.
the attachment tells you, is this person safe? How am I going to be safe? How is this interpersonal relationship going to keep me
Mm-hmm.
feeling safe?
Mm-hmm.
If my Now, so if we use the example with attachment, anxious attachment and avoidant, and we have partners come together, that can be really difficult because you have one
Mm-hmm.
party that's needing some time to recharge and the other party that tends to be triggering for.
Mm-hmm.
So conflict resolution and a lot of work there is really needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just to kind of layer on top of that, what is helpful is checking in with what your love language is and what your apology language is. I know the love language is a little bit more common. I know it's a little dated, and there's some like church references and religion, and if that's not your cup of tea,
Mm-hmm.
I understand. But if just to get a good basis, and so what that tells us is how you as a person receive validation and being seen by a partner.
Okay.
So if maybe your acts of service, and somebody is trying to give you words of affirmation, Susan, I really appreciate everything you're doing, and that's nice, but it doesn't make you feel validated. Now you're kind of running on an empty cup in the relationship, and so
Right.
on and so forth. And then on top of that is the one that's not necessarily so common or discussed anyway, is the apology language. It's created by the same person, but these are small tidbits in communication. For example, if I ate your box of cookies on the counter and I replaced them, to you, it may not feel validating for me to replace them. Maybe you wanted to know that I am sorry and it won't happen again, right?
Right.
But to somebody else that could be validating. So it's these small little things in communication that makes such a huge difference when we're interacting with other people.
Hmm. But it sounds like you need a lot of self-awareness to know all these triggers and to know these attachment styles and to work with them to create good relationships.
Absolutely. And the self-awareness is what can be kind of difficult, right? If we go
Hmm.
to the doctor or a physical therapist or a dermatologist, right, there's going to be questions
Hmm.
around what your routine is. What does that look like? What is, your ins and outs? What kinds of ingredients and things are you interacting, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it's the same thing, checking in with yourself. What are you doing? Because we're so complex as human beings, which is beautiful. But in the same sense, there's no standard of where the cutoff is for things of this kind of subjective nature.
Hmm. And when I always hear like the word like self-love and self-awareness, and that in combination with loving others, I always hear the term, oh, you have to love yourself before you can love someone else. What do you think of that?
I think that is something that I do hear said, and I think the idea behind it is not kind of it's pouring into yourself first. But I think that if
Hmm.
you're in a correctively emotional experience, that could be really beneficial.
Hmm.
Assuming that your partner or your friend group or whoever the interactions are healthy, that can be really nurturing and healing and offer a different kind of almost like an accelerated version of healing, because you're getting these new corrective experiences, like, oh, i don't need to I don't need to think that the relationship is going to come to an end because my partner is not responding to me, right? Almost these
Hmm.
immediate attention of catastrophic events.
Hmm. And what would you advise someone who is in a relationship and they feel like themselves and their partner have very different attachment styles and it clashes a lot? How would that be solved?
Yeah, communication. It's kind of
Hmm.
just discussing and one awareness, having a discussion about that. And I think whether it's the love languages or apology languages, some kind of indicators that let you know, this is how my partner feels validated. So acts of service is one I mentioned, right? So
Hmm.
maybe my partner, if I just kind of put the dishes away, that's completely validating and makes their day, right?
Hmm.
So it's kind of giving the love that is validating to be received from the other person.
Hmm. Yeah, because when you say, okay, we all have a different love language, of course, we can't figure that out just by thinking, the other
Right.
person must have this love language because for other people, it's, like you said, like acts of service or like doing the grocery shopping so that someone
Mm-hmm.
else doesn't have to, but for others, it can be a hug or kind words.
Yeah.
And when others are not that into hugging, so it really about,
Yes.
as you said, like communication and well, but that also that communication to me comes from a base of respect to the other as well, right?
Absolutely. And you said if you can kind of sit there and reflect, we can kind of come to that ourselves. But oftentimes what happens is we subconsciously will give in the way that's helpful for us.
Mm,
Um, right. So maybe if I personally max of service, I know I use that, right? So I will kind of, if I have the space, I will do that. Or
mm,
a gift giving, right? Because I enjoy that.
mm,
So it definitely will manifest in that sense. And with other people, yeah, you're taking two different individuals or plus,
mm,
coming together in a personal romantic kind of a bond. So
mm,
you have one person who grew up in XYZ household, the other one in ABC. You're going to have some conflicting values, communication styles, attachments, validations, and so
mm,
on and so forth. So it's really this dance of how does everybody get seen and validated and
mm.
feel supported and loved.
And when you're in a relationship and you literally just ask the other, what is your love language? And they're like, What is that?
Mhm. Yeah.
What would you advise them to? How would that conversation like look like to you?
Yeah, so it would just kind of be a wordplay, like, okay, well, maybe that person doesn't know. Well, what makes you feel seen as a partner?
Mm,
What makes you feel validated? How can I be helpful to you to convey that I care about you?
mhm.
And it may not, like you said, it does require some self-awareness, and it may not have been a topic that is previously discussed.
Right.
But yeah, there definitely it is beneficial to have some work done on yourself or kind of work through that together. And it may
Mhm.
even just be trial and error. But I think the
Mhm.
intent is will go a long way.
And it's also, of course, with the focus on yourself. If you don't really know yet what your own love language is, you can also ask yourself those same questions, right?
Absolutely. What
Mm,
exactly what's helpful for me? If I'm
yeah.
busy and I know that I need to still mop and sweep and do all these other things, maybe some, yeah, just
Hmm.
asking yourself, well, what would be helpful for me in the midst of
Hmm.
my chaos and my busy day? What's
Hmm.
something that helps me slow down and just take a deep breath of relief?
Yeah, and what makes me feel loved and appreciated in that moment, right?
Exactly. Hmm.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for today, Joanna.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.